100 things to think about when you can't sleep. 1. What your creativity felt like as a child. Think back to when you were young, maybe 6 or 7 years old, and you created something just because you felt like it. Maybe you drew pictures on the back of paper bags, or built elaborate towers out of blocks, or told stories to your stuffed animals that lasted for hours. There were no rules then. No one was grading you. No one was watching over your shoulder asking if it was good enough. You just made things because making things felt natural, like breathing. You didn't wonder if you were creative. You simply were. That kind of creativity lives inside you still. It hasn't gone anywhere. It's just been waiting quietly under the weight of deadlines and responsibilities and the fear of being judged. Tonight, let yourself remember what it felt like to create just for the pure joy of it, before the world told you there was a right way to do things. 2. The first time you made something you were proud of. There was a moment, and you may have to reach back to find it, when you finished something and felt a deep, quiet sense of pride. Maybe it was a drawing you gave to your mom, and she actually put it on the refrigerator. Maybe it was a poem you wrote in school that your teacher read aloud. Maybe it was something you built with your hands, or a meal you cooked, or a letter you finally sent. That feeling, that warm, settled glow of having made something real, it was real too. It mattered. It still matters. Not because anyone else validated it, but because in that moment, you took something that was only inside your mind and brought it into the world. That's one of the most extraordinary things a person can do. And you've done it before, which means you can do it again. 3. How ideas often come when you stop forcing them. You know how it works. You sit down and you try to think of something, and nothing comes. You stare at the blank page. You wait. You push. You feel frustrated. And then, the moment you get up to make a cup of tea or step outside for some air, the idea arrives, fully formed, almost out of nowhere, like it was there the whole time just waiting for you to stop blocking the door. That's not a coincidence. Your mind does its best work when you're not gripping it too tightly. The subconscious is always working, always turning things over, always making quiet connections between ideas you didn't even know you were holding. The pressure you put on yourself to think actually slows that process down. So tonight, as you lie here, there's a good chance that the idea you've been searching for is already on its way. And the best thing you can do is simply let your mind rest. 4. The sound of a pencil moving across paper. There's something almost meditative about the sound of a pencil on paper. That soft, whispering scratch. Not quite a hiss, not quite a whisper. It has a texture to it that feels grounding in a way that's hard to explain. It's one of those sounds that asks nothing of you except to listen. If you've ever sat in a quiet room and drawn or written by hand, you know how that sound can anchor you to the present moment. It pulls you away from the swirl of thoughts and reminds you that you are here, doing this, now. Even if what you're creating is nothing special, just doodles, or notes, or lists, the physical act of moving a pencil across paper has a kind of honesty to it. It can't be deleted. It can't be undone easily. It leaves a trace. And there's something reassuring about that permanence in a world that feels so temporary. 5. The quiet rhythm of creating late at night. There's a particular magic that happens late at night when the rest of the world has gone quiet. The notifications slow down. The demands of the day have faded. And if you've ever tried to create something in those late, still hours, you may have noticed that your mind opens up in ways it doesn't during the day. Writers have talked about it. Painters have painted by lamplight. Musicians have written their most honest songs in the small hours. There's a permission that nighttime gives you that the daytime doesn't. Nobody is going to knock on the door. Nobody needs anything from you right now. And in that space, ideas sometimes surface that had no room to breathe during the busy daylight hours. Even now, lying in the dark, your mind is quieter than it was at noon. That quiet has value. Let it carry you somewhere interesting. 6. How every artist sees the world a little differently. Have you ever looked at a painting and thought, How did they see that? How did they look at an ordinary street or a bowl of fruit or a woman sitting by a window and find that particular angle, that specific light, that arrangement of shapes that suddenly makes everything feel significant? Every creative person carries a slightly different lens. What you notice is not what your neighbor notices. The way you describe a sunset is not the way anyone else in the world would describe that same sunset. Your perspective, the way your particular life, your memories, your sensitivities, your sense of humor all combine, is genuinely unique. No one else has your combination, which means whatever you create carries something that can only come from you. Even if the subject seems ordinary or the skill feels imperfect, the way you see it is irreplaceable. That's not a small thing. That's actually everything. 7. The beauty in unfinished work. Not everything needs to be finished to be beautiful. Some of the most moving creative works in history are the ones that were left incomplete. Half-written symphonies, sketches that were never painted over, journals that ended mid-sentence. There's a kind of beauty in the unfinished that the polished and complete can't quite match, because the unfinished still shows the hand. You can see the thinking. You can feel the process. You can sense the moment the creator stopped, and you wonder what they were reaching for. Your own unfinished projects have that quality too. That story you started and set aside. That painting that's still in the corner. That song you never quite got to the end of. They aren't failures. They're evidence of reaching. And sometimes the most important thing isn't whether something gets finished. It's that you tried, that you started, that you were willing to begin something you couldn't yet see the end of. 8. What inspires you without you even realizing it? Inspiration is sneaky. It doesn't always arrive as a dramatic bolt of lightning or a sudden flood of energy. More often, it seeps in gradually through things you absorb without even meaning to. A color you kept noticing on your commute, a line from a book you read months ago, a conversation you had with a stranger that stuck with you in a way you couldn't explain. Your mind collects these things. It files them away without your permission and without any clear sense of how they'll be used later. And then one day, you'll be making something and you'll realize that what you're making is somehow connected to all of those quiet accumulations. Inspiration has been building in you this whole time. It's always building. Even tonight, even lying still in the dark, something you've seen or heard or felt recently is slowly working its way into something new. You don't have to do anything. Just let it happen. 9. The colors you're most drawn to lately. Think about the colors that have been pulling at you recently. Not the colors you think you're supposed to like, or the ones that are currently trending in design, but the ones that actually catch your eye. Maybe it's a deep, dusty blue like the sky just after sunset. Maybe it's that particular shade of green that lives in old forests, or the warm amber of late afternoon light on wood floors. Colors have a way of mirroring where we are emotionally. The ones we're drawn to at any given time often say something quiet but true about our inner state. Warm colors when we're seeking comfort. Cool colors when we're looking for calm. Bright colors when some part of us is restless and wanting to move. You don't have to analyze it too deeply. Just let yourself notice. What color feels right to you tonight? What shade would you wrap around yourself if you could? 10. How creativity changes over time. The way you create at 40 is not the way you created at 20, and the way you'll create at 60 will be different still. Creativity doesn't age, but it matures. It deepens. It gets more patient. When you're younger, there's often urgency to it, a need to prove something, to make an impression, to be seen. But as time goes on, many people find that the creativity becomes quieter and more honest. You care less about what other people think and more about what feels true. You start to understand your own rhythms better, when to push and when to wait, when to share and when to keep something close. The themes that matter to you settle into focus. Your voice becomes more distinctly yours. Whatever stage of life you're in right now, your creativity is exactly where it's supposed to be. Not less than it was before. Just different, and maybe, in the most important ways, more. 11. The feeling of getting lost in your work. You know that state where time disappears? Where you look up and an hour has gone by and it felt like 10 minutes. Where your tea has gone cold and you didn't even notice, and the room has gotten darker but you haven't thought to turn on a light. That's flow. Psychologists call it that. This state of complete absorption where the self quietly steps aside and something larger takes over. It's one of the most satisfying feelings available to human beings, and it's available to anyone who creates anything. Whether you're painting, writing, cooking, gardening, playing music, or building something with your hands. The key is that you have to care about what you're doing just enough to be challenged, but not so much that the pressure blocks the flow. Think about the last time you felt it. Think about what you were doing. That's a thread worth following. 12. Why some ideas stay with you for years. Every once in a while, an idea arrives and never really leaves. It might sit quietly in the background for months, even years. You might try to move on from it, tell yourself it was just a passing thought. But it keeps returning. It surfaces in unexpected moments. In the shower, on a drive, right before you fall asleep. There's a reason for that. Ideas that persist are ideas that have something to say. They're not random. They're connected to something in you that hasn't been expressed yet. Something that needs to come out in some form. The patient, returning idea is one of the most trustworthy signals a creative person can receive. It's the mind's way of saying, this matters. Don't abandon this. Pay attention here. If there's an idea that's been following you around, even a vague one, a mood, an image, a feeling you keep wanting to capture, maybe it's time to stop running from it and start running toward it. 13. The small details most people overlook. The texture of peeling paint on an old door. The way a specific coffee shop smells at exactly 7 in the morning. The slight hesitation before someone laughs when they're genuinely surprised. The sound rain makes on different surfaces, soft on grass, sharp on metal, hollow on a wooden deck. Most people move through the world at too fast a pace to register these things. But some people notice. You might be one of them. The noticing. The willingness to slow down enough to let the world's details actually land on you is the foundation of creativity. It's how writers find metaphors and painters find light and musicians find rhythm. The world is more detailed than we give it credit for. It's offering us something in every single moment. The question is just whether we're moving slowly enough, quietly enough, to receive it. 14. How music can change your entire mood. It happens in seconds, doesn't it? The right song comes on, and something in your chest shifts. The tension in your shoulders softens. Or the opposite, a song lifts you up from a flat, gray afternoon and suddenly you feel like something is possible again. Music goes somewhere in us that words and images can't quite reach. It bypasses the thinking mind and goes straight to the body, straight to the feeling self. Scientists have studied this, but anyone who has ever sobbed at a song they didn't expect to hit them knows it intuitively. Music reaches back into memory with uncanny accuracy, pulling up whole years, whole selves, that you thought you'd left behind. Think of a song that does this to you. Really think of it. Let yourself hear it in your mind right now. Notice what it brings up. Notice where it takes you. Music is one of the most generous things human beings have ever made. 15. The comfort of creating just for yourself. Not everything you make needs an audience. In fact, some of the most honest creative work happens when you know for certain that no one will ever see it. The journal no one reads. The sketches you keep in a drawer. The songs you sing only when you're alone in the car. There's a freedom in private creation that public creation can't quite match. When you're not performing for anyone, you don't have to be impressive. You don't have to be consistent with whatever version of yourself you've been presenting to the world. You can be uncertain, exploratory, strange, funny, dark, romantic, weird, whatever the moment calls for. Creating just for yourself is also an act of self-respect. It says, my inner world matters. My thoughts and feelings deserve expression, even if only I ever witness them. That's not selfishness. That's a kind of basic, necessary honoring of who you are. 16. What your ideal creative space looks like. Close your eyes and imagine it. What does your perfect creative space feel like? Maybe it's a small, warm room with wood floors and bookshelves and a window that looks out onto something quiet. A garden. A street with not too much traffic. A patch of sky. Maybe it's a studio with high ceilings and northern light. Maybe it's actually quite spare and minimal. Just a table, a lamp, and silence. Or maybe it's a little cluttered and cozy, filled with interesting objects and textures, and the feeling that all of your past work is present around you, keeping you company. The ideal space is different for everyone. But most people, when they really imagine it, can feel it, the temperature of it, the light in it, the sounds or the silence. That space exists somewhere inside you as a kind of template, and you can create elements of it wherever you are, even imperfectly, because the inner environment matters more than the outer one. 17. The sounds that help you focus. Some people need complete silence. Others need the low hum of a coffee shop, just enough ambient noise to push the self-consciousness out of the way. Some people work best with music playing. Not music they love too much, but something steady and instrumental. Something that occupies the chattering part of the brain so the deeper part can work. Rain is popular. So is the sound of a fan, or wind through trees, or distant birdsong. There's an entire genre of ambient sound made specifically to help people find that state of soft, open focus. It works because the right sound creates a kind of auditory container, a boundary around your attention that keeps it from drifting. Think about what sounds calm you. What sounds make you feel like you can breathe more easily? What auditory environment makes you feel safe enough to let your guard down and actually think? That's useful information about yourself worth keeping. 18. How mistakes often lead to something better. The history of creative work is full of accidents that turned into masterpieces. A painter who knocked over their palette and discovered a color they never would have chosen deliberately. A writer who misremembered a fact, and in doing so invented something truer than the truth. A musician who played the wrong chord and heard in it the beginning of something new. Mistakes have energy. They push you off the expected path and force you to navigate somewhere unfamiliar. And unfamiliar territory is where interesting things are found. The problem is that we're trained from early on to see mistakes as evidence of failure, as things to be corrected and erased and hidden. But the most generative attitude toward a mistake is simple curiosity. What is this? Where does it lead? Could it be the beginning of something I wouldn't have found any other way? The answer, more often than you'd think, is yes. 19. The textures you enjoy working with. Creativity is physical. Even if you work in a medium that seems purely mental, writing, composing music, there are physical sensations involved. The weight of a pen in your hand, the resistance of a key on an instrument, the particular give of the material you're working with. But some creative work is explicitly tactile. Clay under your hands, fabric moving through a needle, wood that responds differently depending on how you angle the blade, yarn that has a particular weight and warmth. Even the texture of a canvas or a specific kind of paper changes the experience of working. Think about the textures you love. Not just in creating, but in general, in the objects you reach for, the materials you find yourself touching. Texture is one of the body's most direct languages. It tells you something about comfort, about preference, about what kind of engagement feels right. What textures bring you back to yourself. 20. The difference between creating and judging. Creating and judging are two very different mental states, and the trouble is that most of us try to do them at the same time, which is like trying to drive and park simultaneously. The creating mind is open, associative, playful, willing to follow an impulse without knowing where it leads. The judging mind is critical, comparative, concerned with quality and correctness, and what other people will think. Both are necessary, but they work best in sequence, not in tandem. When you try to judge what you're making while you're making it, you slow the creating to a standstill. The inner critic talks louder than the imagination. Nothing good enough gets past it. The invitation, especially late at night when defenses are low, is to let the creating mind run first, uninterrupted, uncommitted to being perfect. The judging mind will get its turn later. Tonight, the creating mind gets to speak. 21. What you would create if no one ever saw it. Here's a question worth sitting with. If you knew with absolute certainty that no one would ever see what you made, no feedback, no praise, no criticism, not even a passing glance, what would you create? The answer to that question is often surprisingly honest. Without the audience, the performance falls away. You don't have to be impressive or consistent or careful. You just have to be true. Maybe you'd write something angry, or sad, or embarrassingly romantic. Maybe you'd paint something that didn't make visual sense but felt exactly right. Maybe you'd make something deliberately ugly, or strange, or so personal it would take too long to explain to anyone. That private creative impulse is where your most authentic work lives. And the beautiful thing is, you can actually do this. You can create things that you keep just for yourself. The audience doesn't have to be part of every creative act. Sometimes the only witness that matters is you. 22. The freedom in not needing perfection. Perfectionism is a thief. It takes the joy out of making things and replaces it with an endless, exhausting audit of everything that isn't quite right. It tells you that what you've made isn't good enough, that you're not skilled enough, that you should wait until you're more ready, and of course, you're never quite ready, because ready is a moving target that perfection keeps pushing further away. But here's what perfectionism never tells you. Done is better than perfect. Imperfect and shared is better than perfect and hidden. The thing that actually exists in the world, however flawed, has more value than the ideal version that exists only in your imagination. The scrappiest, most imperfect creative act is more alive than the imagined masterpiece that never got made. Give yourself permission to make something rough. Make something that isn't all the way there yet. Make something and let it be exactly what it is, no more, no less. 23. How your style has evolved over time. If you look back at your earliest creative work, really look at it without cringing, you'll notice something. There's a thread running through it. Even when the skill wasn't there, even when the execution was clumsy, there was a sensibility that was already distinctly yours. A way of approaching things. Certain subjects you kept returning to. A particular mood or tone or set of questions you couldn't leave alone. That's the beginning of a style. And style doesn't arrive fully formed. It accumulates slowly, through repetition and failure and growth, and the gradual discovery of what matters to you and what doesn't. Think about how you've changed as a creator. What have you let go of? What have you held on to? What elements of your work feel most like you? In the deepest sense, style is just the fingerprint of your inner life, showing up again and again in whatever you make. It's worth recognizing and honoring. 24. The way light changes how things look. The same room at noon and at dusk might as well be two different rooms. Morning light is thin and clear and honest. Afternoon light is warm and golden and slightly melancholy. The French call it the blue hour for a reason. Lamplight softens and flattens. Candlelight is intimate and uneven, making everything feel closer and more human. Light is the invisible collaborator in every visual experience. Artists have spent entire careers chasing particular qualities of light. The way it pours through a window in the early morning, the way it catches the edge of a glass, the way shadows fall differently in winter than in summer. You don't have to be a painter to appreciate this. Just notice, the next time you're somewhere familiar, how the light changes the feeling of that place. Notice how you feel differently in bright light versus dim light. The light around you is always quietly shaping your experience, whether you're aware of it or not. 25. Why certain songs feel nostalgic. There are songs that carry whole years inside them. You hear the first few notes and you're transported, not just to a memory, but back into the feeling of a particular time. The age you were. The person you were with. The version of yourself that existed before certain things happened. Nostalgia in music works this way because we learn songs during emotionally significant periods of our lives, and the brain binds the music to those experiences almost like a stamp. The song becomes a key to a specific emotional archive. And when you hear it again years later, the archive opens. It's one of the most remarkable things about how human memory works. Is there a song like that for you? One that carries a whole period of your life inside it? Think of what that song brings back. Not just the memory, but the feeling of being that younger version of yourself. What would you say to them, now from here? 26. The emotions behind your favorite pieces. Think of a creative work you love deeply. A painting, a song, a film, a book, a poem. Now think about what you feel when you encounter it. Not what it's about, not what the creator intended, but what it makes you feel, specifically and personally. That feeling is information. It tells you something about what you're hungry for, what you're missing, what moves you at the level beneath logic. The work that hits us hardest usually touches something unresolved, something we haven't found a way to say ourselves. We recognize it in someone else's work and feel that particular relief of being understood. Even by someone who didn't know us, even across centuries, even across languages. The emotions your favorite pieces bring up are a map to your own creative interior. What are they pointing to? What is it in you that responds so strongly? What is the thing inside you that recognizes itself in that work? 27. The process more than the outcome. We live in a culture that's obsessed with outcomes, with products, results, finished things that can be shared and evaluated and assigned a value. But ask any creator what the most satisfying part of their work is, and most of them will tell you it's the process. The doing, not the done. The hours of being lost in something, not the moment of completion. The making matters more than the made. This is something that's easy to forget because the outcomes are visible and the process is invisible. We see the finished painting on the wall. We don't see the 20 attempts that preceded it, the afternoon of staring at the canvas, the moment of giving up and then coming back. If you can shift your orientation toward the process, toward valuing the time you spend making as inherently worthwhile, regardless of what it produces, you'll find that creative work becomes more sustainable, more pleasurable, and, paradoxically, often better. The outcome takes care of itself when the process is honored. 28. How creativity connects different people. One of the strangest and most beautiful things about creative work is how it crosses the distances between people. A poem written in grief becomes a comfort to someone who never knew the person who wrote it. A melody composed in solitude is hummed by strangers on the other side of the world. A painting made in a small studio is seen by eyes the painter never imagined, in times the painter never lived to see. Creativity is one of the few things that actually gets to travel, across time, across language, across all the usual barriers between human beings. When you make something, you're sending a message forward, even if you don't know who will receive it. And when you're moved by someone else's work, you're completing that circuit. You're saying to someone, across whatever distance exists between you, I understand this. I feel this too. I am less alone because of what you made. That's not a small thing. That might be everything. 29. The quiet confidence of making something. There's a specific kind of quiet confidence that comes from having made things, not the loud, performative confidence of someone who needs to be seen, but the settled, interior confidence of someone who knows they are capable of creation. It doesn't require an audience to sustain it. It doesn't need external validation, though that's always nice when it comes. It's just a deep, personal knowledge. I can make things. I have made things. Whatever happens, that capacity belongs to me. This confidence is built slowly, through the accumulation of small acts of creation. All the times you started something, all the times you finished something, all the times you kept going when it felt difficult. You've earned it, even if you don't always feel it. Especially on the nights when the inner critic is loud and the doubt is heavy, try to remember that the capacity to create is one of your most fundamental attributes. It was there before the doubt. It will be there after. 30. What inspires you in nature? Nature has been the original source of creative inspiration for as long as humans have made things. The movement of water, the structure of a leaf, so efficient in its design. The way a flock of birds moves together as if following an invisible choreography. The silence of a forest in winter. The particular smell of rain hitting dry earth. The unsettling beauty of a storm. Nature is generous with its details and patient with its observers. It has no agenda. It doesn't perform or explain itself. It simply is, in all of its extraordinary complexity, and the watching of it, the real, unhurried watching, is one of the deepest sources of creative nourishment available. Think about the natural place that means the most to you. A specific beach, a trail, a view from a window. Let yourself be there for a moment in your mind. Let it offer you whatever it has tonight. 31. The patterns you notice in everyday life. Look closely at almost anything and patterns emerge. The way people behave in waiting rooms. The rhythm of a neighborhood at different times of day. The way arguments tend to follow the same arc, regardless of the subject. The patterns in how plants grow, how cities are laid out, how friendships form and dissolve, and sometimes reform years later. Pattern recognition is at the heart of both creativity and understanding. When you notice a pattern, you're seeing the structure underneath the surface of things, the invisible logic that holds the world together. Creative people are often compulsive pattern noticers. They can't help it. They're always slightly behind everyone else in the conversation because they were busy noticing that the table has a grain pattern that looks like a river delta. If you're someone who notices things like this, patterns in behavior, in light, in language, in form, that's not distraction. That's your mind doing what it's meant to do. 32. How rest can improve creativity. There's a persistent myth that creative people should push through exhaustion. That the suffering produces the work, that rest is for people who aren't serious. This is not only false, it's actively harmful. Rest is when the brain consolidates what it has learned. It's when unconscious processing happens, when the ideas that were colliding all day finally settle into new arrangements. Sleep, in particular, is when the brain does its most important organizational work, connecting distant concepts, pruning what isn't needed, strengthening what matters. Many great ideas have arrived in that hypnagogic state just before sleep, or in dreams, or in the foggy, open moments just after waking. The rested creative is almost always more effective than the exhausted one. So if you're lying here tonight, letting your body and mind slow down, this isn't wasted time. This is, in a very real sense, part of the creative process. You're doing the work right now, without even knowing it. 33. The way ideas slowly take shape. Ideas rarely arrive fully formed. More often they come as a feeling first. A vague sense that there's something there, something worth pursuing, even if you can't quite see it yet. Then, gradually, like a photograph developing in a darkroom, the edges become clearer. A detail appears. Then another. The idea begins to have some specificity. It starts to suggest what it wants to be. This process takes time, and it can be difficult to trust when you're in the early stages of it. When the idea is still formless, and you can't tell if it's going somewhere real or just evaporating. But most ideas that feel persistent deserve to be followed a little further. Give them time. Give them the dignity of being thought about seriously before you decide they're not worth pursuing. Some of the most fully realized works of creativity started as the vaguest possible hunch, and it was the patient following of that hunch that eventually revealed what was there. 34. Why some creations feel effortless. There are days when the work flows easily, when you sit down and things simply come, when the choices feel obvious and the execution feels almost automatic. And there are other days when every sentence is a struggle, every mark feels wrong, every note sounds flat. What's the difference? Usually it's not skill, which doesn't change dramatically from day to day. It's often a combination of factors. How well you slept, whether you're emotionally clear, how recently you've filled your creative reserves, whether the particular project is ripe yet. Effortlessness, when it comes, is partly a sign that your conscious and unconscious minds have aligned, that you've done enough preparation, absorbed enough material, thought long enough about something that your system is now ready to output. You can't force effortlessness, but you can create the conditions for it by staying curious, resting well, and trusting that the hard days and the easy days are both part of the same cycle. 35. The calm in repetitive creative tasks. There's a specific kind of peace that comes from creative tasks that are repetitive. Knitting, embroidery, whittling, weaving, the long careful hatching of a drawing, the practice of scales on an instrument. The repetition creates a kind of rhythm that quiets the thinking mind. You don't have to figure out what to do next. Your hands know what to do. And in that space of automatic, practice motion, your mind can drift, freely, gently, without pressure. It's a form of moving meditation, and many people find it more accessible than traditional seated meditation precisely because the hands are occupied. The body is doing something, which makes the mind feel less restless. If you have a creative practice that involves this kind of repetition, you already know this feeling. If you don't, it might be worth exploring. There's a quietness available in the rhythmic and the repeated that's harder to find in the explosive and the new. 36. The way your mind wanders during quiet moments. Right now, in the quietness, your mind is wandering. It's making small journeys, to a conversation from earlier today, to a memory from years ago, to an imagined future scenario, to a question that has no clear answer. Mind wandering gets a bad reputation, as though it's just distraction, something to be overcome, corralled, managed. But research has shown that the wandering mind is actually doing important work. It's the mode in which we reflect on ourselves, imagine other perspectives, envision the future, process emotional experiences, and make connections between different areas of our knowledge. In short, mind wandering is where a great deal of the most valuable thinking happens. The key isn't to stop your mind from wandering. It's to occasionally notice where it went, and to treat what you find there with curiosity rather than judgment. What has your mind been moving toward tonight? What does it keep returning to? 37. How creativity can be a form of escape. Sometimes you need to go somewhere else for a while. Not physically, just in your mind, your attention, your spirit. And creativity is one of the most satisfying ways to travel without moving. When you're writing a story, you're inside a different world with different rules. When you're painting, you're inside the logic of color and form, which has its own laws and its own satisfactions. When you're playing music, you're inside time structured in a way that the ordinary world isn't. These creative worlds aren't less real than the world you're escaping from. In some ways they're more real, because you get to choose what matters in them. You get to make the rules. And when you come back from them, you often feel more capable of dealing with whatever you temporarily left behind. Escape doesn't mean avoidance. Creative escape is often just a different angle of approach, a way of resting from one problem in order to return to it with fresh eyes. 38. The joy of starting something new. There's something electric about a beginning. The blank page, the fresh canvas, the first day of a new project, before the complications arrive, before the middle of the work slog sets in, before the gap between what you imagined and what you're actually making becomes apparent. In the beginning, everything is still possible. The work hasn't made any irreversible choices yet. It could go in any direction. That openness has a particular energy, a kind of creative optimism that's worth noticing and savoring because it doesn't last. Once you're deep into something, the early lightness gives way to the harder work of actually bringing a complex thing to life. But the beginning is always there, waiting at the edge of any idea you haven't started yet. Think of something you've been wanting to begin. Feel the potential of it. The beginning is always available. It's one of the most generously renewable resources you have. 39. The patience creativity teaches. If you stay with a creative practice long enough, it will teach you patience. Not as a virtue you try to cultivate, but as a simple necessity. You can't rush the middle of a painting. You can't force a story to know what it wants to be. You can't make a skill arrive before its time. The work itself sets the pace, and the creative person's job is to follow it. This can be deeply frustrating, especially in a culture that rewards speed and immediacy. But there's something enormously valuable in being taught by a process that won't be hurried. Patience in creativity tends to spill over into other areas of life. The person who has learned to sit with an unfinished thing, to trust that it will find its form in its own time, also learns to sit with unfinished situations in their life, uncertainty, ambiguity, the not yet resolved. Creativity teaches you that not everything needs to be immediately complete to be worth staying with. 40. The importance of slowing down. Speed is overvalued. We move through our days at a pace that doesn't leave room for much depth. We skim surfaces. We rush to the next thing. We rarely let any single experience actually settle before we're moving on to the next. But depth is where the interesting things are. Depth is where meaning lives. Creativity, almost without exception, requires slowing down, not all the time, but for long enough to really see what's in front of you, to really hear what's being said, to really feel what's happening. When you slow down, you start to notice what you usually miss. The world becomes more specific, more textured, more interesting. Ideas that were flying past at high speed become catchable. Tonight is a kind of invitation to slowness. There's nowhere to be. Nothing is required of you right now except to rest, to breathe, and to let the pace of your mind drop toward something quieter and more spacious. 41. The beauty of simple ideas. The most enduring ideas are often the simplest. Not simplistic, simple, clean, precise. The kind of idea that makes you think, how did I not see that before? Why has no one said this in exactly this way? Simple ideas are deceptive. They look easy, which makes people assume they require less thought. In fact, simple ideas often require more thought than complicated ones, because you have to cut through all the noise and complication to find the clear, still thing at the center. Think of the most beautifully simple things you've encountered in creative work. A two-word title that holds an entire world. A painting that uses almost no color but says everything. A melody so stripped down it seems inevitable, like it always existed and was just waiting to be found. What would it mean to apply that kind of simplicity to something you're thinking about or working on? What can be taken away, leaving only what's essential? 42. How inspiration comes from unexpected places. You might expect inspiration to come from grand experiences, traveling to foreign places, witnessing extraordinary things, spending time with exceptional people. And those things can certainly spark ideas. But inspiration is just as often found in the completely ordinary. A conversation overheard on a bus. A stranger's face at just the right angle in just the right light. A mundane task that suddenly reveals something about the nature of things. A phrase in a book that wasn't even in the chapter you were trying to read. Inspiration doesn't care about your plans for it. It arrives where it arrives, when it arrives. The best you can do is stay permeable, curious and open and paying attention, even to things that seem beneath notice. The unexpected source of inspiration is actually the rule, not the exception. The creative person learns to receive it wherever it lands, without insisting it come through the front door. 43. The way music tells a story without words. There's something astonishing about instrumental music. The way it can convey longing, or triumph, or grief, or joy, without a single word. No characters, no plot, no language. Just organized sound moving through time. And yet you feel it. You know what it's saying, even though it isn't saying anything in a conventional sense. This is one of music's great mysteries and one of its great gifts. It communicates something that language can only approximate. There are emotional textures that are too subtle for words, too complex and simultaneous and fleeting. Music reaches those places. It doesn't explain the feeling, it creates it, or recreates it, inside the listener. Think of a piece of music that does this to you, that tells you something without words. Think of what it tells you. Not in language, but in whatever the pre-linguistic part of you understands. That understanding is real, even if it can't be fully translated. 44. The feeling of finishing something meaningful. There's a particular kind of exhausted satisfaction that comes from finishing something you genuinely cared about. Something that cost you real effort, real time, real attention. It's different from just completing a task. It's different from checking something off a list. It's a feeling that sits deeper than relief, though there's relief in it. There's also a small grief, because the process is over and the intimacy of being inside that work, the particular relationship between you and the thing you were making, is finished. You'll never be in that specific creative space again, which makes finishing something both an ending and a proof. A proof that you can care about something that much. A proof that you can sustain effort over time. A proof that what you make is real. Think of something you've finished that mattered to you. Hold that feeling for a moment. You earned it. And you can earn it again. 57. The silence between thoughts. Notice, if you can, the space between one thought and the next. There's a moment, just a breath, where one thought ends and the next hasn't arrived yet. The mind is clear, open, not yet occupied. It's the briefest pause, but it's there. In meditation traditions, this gap between thoughts is considered significant. Not nothing, but rather the ground from which thought arises. Pure awareness, before content. You don't have to meditate to notice it. You can notice it right now, lying here in the dark, simply by paying attention to the rhythm of your own thinking. Thoughts arise. They have their moment. They pass. And in the passing, there's a beat of quiet. The more you practice noticing that quiet, the wider it seems to become. The silence between thoughts isn't empty. It's actually very full, with potential, with rest, with the particular piece of a mind that isn't requiring anything of itself. 58. The feeling of being inspired. Real inspiration. The genuine article has a physical quality. You can feel it in your body. Something lifts. Something quickens. There's an aliveness and an urgency that wasn't there a moment before. An idea has arrived and it feels important, feels possible, feels like something you want to follow wherever it goes. Inspiration is often talked about as though it's a mystical visitation, but it's also a neurological event. A moment when multiple parts of the brain align and something clicks into place in a way that generates that feeling of sudden, excited clarity. You can't manufacture inspiration on demand, but you can create conditions that make it more likely. Filling your creative reserves with good material, resting so your mind can make connections, staying curious and open, moving your body. And you can also learn to recognize it when it comes, to put down whatever you're doing and follow it, because inspiration is one of the most genuinely renewable resources you have. Don't let it pass unacknowledged. 59. The process of learning something new. Remember what it felt like to be a complete beginner at something? The humbling experience of not knowing anything yet, of your hands not cooperating, your eye not yet trained, your instincts still developing. It's uncomfortable, yes, but it's also extraordinary, because the beginner's mind is open in a way that the expert's mind sometimes isn't. The beginner sees everything with fresh eyes. Nothing is taken for granted. Everything is a discovery. Learning something new keeps you humble and keeps you curious, which are two of the most important qualities a creative person can maintain. It also feeds your existing practice in unexpected ways. Skills and sensibilities from one discipline transfer to another, often in the most surprising directions. What would it mean to take on something completely new? Not to be good at it, not to master it, just to experience what it's like to be a beginner again. The beginner's mind is a gift. Don't give it up too quickly. 60. The calm of working slowly. There's a particular quality of attention available when you deliberately slow down the pace of your work. When you're not trying to produce quickly, when you're not racing toward a finish line, when you're simply moving through the work with care and full attention, something opens. You start to notice things you'd miss at speed. A texture, a word choice, a relationship between elements that was invisible when you were moving too fast. Slow work isn't always the right approach, and there are times when speed and spontaneity produce better results than deliberateness. But the capacity to slow down, to work with patience and precision and real presence, is one worth cultivating. It counteracts the culture of rushed production. It insists that the quality of attention you bring to the making is as important as the efficiency of the output. What would it mean to make something very, very slowly? To take as long as it actually needs? 61. The beauty of imperfect lines. A hand-drawn line has character that a digitally perfect line doesn't. It wobbles slightly. It hesitates in places. It shows the uncertainty of the hand that made it, the specific pressure of a specific moment, the small human variations that no machine can perfectly replicate. That imperfection isn't a flaw. It's what makes the line alive. It's evidence of a person. The same is true across all creative media. The slightly off-key note that somehow makes the song more moving. The sentence that breaks the grammatical rules but communicates something the correct sentence couldn't. The photograph that's just slightly out of focus in a way that makes it feel more like a memory than a record. Imperfection, when it's honest rather than careless, often carries more feeling than technical perfection. Because it's real. Because it's human. Because it shows us that something was made by a person who was doing their best with what they had. That's more beautiful than flawlessness. 62. The feeling of creative freedom. What would it feel like to create with no constraints at all? No material limitations, no skill gaps, no concern about what anyone thought, no deadline, no genre conventions, no expectations. Just pure creative freedom. The imagination opens up considerably at that thought. What would you make? What would you reach for? Where would you even begin? Most of us live so far inside our practical limitations that we rarely let ourselves think that openly about creative possibility. But the exercise of imagining unconstrained freedom is valuable even if the freedom itself is impossible, because it tells you something about your genuine creative desires, what you'd reach for if reaching were easy. And sometimes those desires are achievable in modified form within real constraints. The totally free version points towards something real, even if the path there requires compromise and adaptation. What is your most unconstrained creative desire right now? 63. The way your thoughts drift at night. Nighttime thinking has its own quality, looser, more associative, less committed to logic, and more open to strangeness. The thoughts drift. They connect in ways that wouldn't happen during the structured, purposeful thinking of the day. You might find yourself thinking about something from 10 years ago and then, almost without transition, something from tomorrow, and then a question that has nothing to do with either. This is not unfocused thinking, it's differently focused. It's the mind doing a kind of free-ranging survey, following the threads that connect things at a level deeper than the ordinary daylight mind usually reaches. Some of the most creative and useful realizations come from exactly this kind of drifting nighttime thinking. You can't direct it without losing it, but you can stay present to it, curious about where it goes, occasionally pausing to note what's arising. Your drifting nighttime mind is one of your most interesting minds. Let it go where it needs to go. 64. The inspiration you find in other artists. One of the privileges of being a creative person is that other creative people's work is available to you as fuel. Not just as entertainment, but as genuine nourishment, as evidence of what's possible, as a conversation partner, as a mirror that shows you aspects of your own sensibility you hadn't yet articulated. The artists who move you most are usually the ones who are doing something similar to what you're trying to do, but doing it in a way that's further along or in a direction you hadn't considered. They're showing you the territory. They're saying, there's more here than you thought. You can go further. Think of the artists who have most influenced how you see your creative work. Not just the obvious heroes, but the ones who changed something specifically, shifted an approach, opened up a new possibility, gave you permission you didn't know you needed. What did they show you? What is the next thing you need someone to show you? 65. The importance of taking breaks. The brain is not designed for sustained, focused attention without rest. It works in cycles, roughly 90 minutes of focused work, followed by a need for recovery. When you push through that need without resting, the quality of your thinking deteriorates, even if you don't immediately notice it. Breaks aren't laziness. They're physiological necessity and creative strategy. Some of the best ideas arrive during breaks, in the middle of a walk, in the shower, in the moment when you put the work down and stop thinking about it directly. The unconscious mind, freed from the specific task, often finds a new angle on it in exactly the way the directly focused mind couldn't. This is why the advice to sleep on it actually works. If you've been pushing hard on something creative and feeling stuck, the most productive thing might be the counterintuitive one. Stop. Walk away. Let the work breathe. Give your mind a chance to work on it from the back. 66. The quiet satisfaction of progress. You don't always need to finish something to feel the satisfaction of progress. Sometimes the most sustaining feeling is simply knowing that you've moved forward, that something is further along than it was yesterday, that the work is developing even if it isn't done. Small progress is real progress. A page is more than no pages. A sketch is more than a blank canvas. A single good line is more than silence. In fact, the research on motivation suggests that one of the most consistent sources of positive feeling at work is what researchers call the progress principle, the simple experience of making meaningful forward movement on work that matters to you. You don't need a breakthrough. You don't need a masterpiece. You just need to have moved the thing a little bit further forward. Think of something you've been working on. Even small steps count. Even the thought you had today that clarified something. Progress. 67. The stories behind what you create. Every creative work has a story behind it, often more interesting than the work itself. The circumstances under which it was made, the problem you were trying to solve, the emotion you were in the grip of, the piece you were responding to, or the conversation that started it, or the dream you woke up with that you didn't want to lose. These origin stories matter not just as anecdote, but as understanding. When you know why you made something, you understand it differently. And sometimes the story reveals what you were actually doing underneath the stated purpose. You thought you were making a birthday card, but you were really processing grief. You thought you were writing a comedy, but you were really talking to your younger self. The stories behind your creative work are a record of your inner life, as honest as anything else you've left behind. What's the story behind something you made recently? What were you really doing when you made it? 68. The way creativity helps you understand yourself. One of the quietest and most important functions of creative work is that it helps you find out what you think, what you feel, and who you are. Writing is the clearest example. The experience of putting words on the page often reveals something you didn't know you knew, or didn't know you felt, until the writing made it visible. But the same is true of other creative work. The way you use color, the images you're drawn to, the stories you keep wanting to tell, the forms you return to again and again. All of these are acts of self-revelation, even when you're not trying. Creative work is a mirror, sometimes a clear one, sometimes a distorted one, but always showing you something real about your interior life. If you want to understand yourself better, make something. Make something without judging it. Make something, and then look at what you made with honest curiosity. What does it tell you about the person who made it? 69. The comfort of familiar ideas. Not everything needs to be new. There's genuine comfort in returning to ideas that feel like home. The themes, images, questions, or aesthetics that you've lived with for a long time, that you know deeply, that you understand in your bones. Familiar ideas are often the ones that carry the most personal meaning. They're the ideas that have survived long enough to prove themselves, that have shown up enough times to demonstrate they have something to say. Returning to them isn't stagnation, it's deepening. Each time you visit a familiar idea, you bring a different version of yourself to it, which means you find something different there. The idea you've been living with for years is not the same as it was when you first found it. You've grown around it. Your understanding of it has become more layered, more complex, more yours. Familiar ideas are not exhausted ideas. They're the ones that matter enough to keep returning to. 70. The excitement of new ones. And then there are the new ideas. The ones that arrive without warning and send a little jolt of energy through you. The ones that feel genuinely fresh and undiscovered. New ideas have a particular quality of aliveness that's distinct from the depth of familiar ones. They're brighter, more uncertain, more open. They don't have the patina of repeated handling yet. They're still a little wild, still capable of surprising you. The excitement of a new idea can be contagious. It spills over into your mood, into your energy, into your desire to work. Even if most new ideas don't fully develop into something sustaining, the experience of having them is itself valuable. It reminds you that creative possibilities are not limited, that new territory is always opening up, that there are always directions you haven't gone yet. What new idea has appeared in your mind recently? What is it pointing toward? Is it worth following? 71. The way light and shadow interact. Shadow is not simply the absence of light. It's a presence of its own, with texture and depth and information. The way something looks in full light is only one truth about it. The way it looks when shadow falls across it. The way shadow defines edges, creates mystery, softens or hardens what it touches, is a different truth, equally real. Artists have understood this for millennia. You can't paint light without painting shadow, because each defines the other. This is not just an aesthetic observation, but almost a philosophical one. The shadow gives the lit area its significance. The darkness makes the light visible. Without the contrast, you have neither, just a flat and undifferentiated field. Think about the way this principle extends beyond visual art. The difficult periods in your life gave meaning to the easier ones. The silence gives weight to the sound. The rest is what makes the work possible. Light and shadow are in conversation, always. You can't fully understand one without the other. 72. The rhythm of your favorite music. Rhythm is the most physical element of music. Before the melody registers, before the harmony resolves, the rhythm is already in your body. Tapping a foot, nodding a head, settling the breath into a pattern. Rhythm organizes time. It says, here is the beat, here is the space between beats, here is the expectation, and here is the moment of resolution. And our bodies respond to that organization almost involuntarily, because rhythm is deeply wired into us. We have heartbeats, breath cycles, sleep cycles, walking gaits. Our bodies are already rhythmic before any music starts. Good music meets that internal rhythm and enters into a relationship with it. Think of the rhythm in your favorite music. Feel it if you can. Not just hear it, but feel it. Where do you feel it in your body? Let your breath slow to match something gentle and regular tonight. 73. The stillness of nighttime. Right now, the world is mostly still. Not completely, there's always sound, always movement somewhere. But the pace of the night is slower and the stillness is more available than it is during the day. Stillness is not simply the absence of movement or sound. It's an active quality, a kind of gathered, present quietness that has weight and texture. You can feel the stillness of a night like this. It has a different quality than the stillness of a library or a museum. Those are stillnesses imposed, negotiated, maintained against the pressure of movement. The stillness of late night is more natural, more organic. It arrives on its own as the world slows down. You don't have to maintain it. You just have to receive it. Let the stillness of tonight settle around you like something gentle and large. You don't have to do anything with it. Just let it be here, with you. 74. The way your mind solves problems quietly. The most important thinking you do is often thinking you're not aware of. Problems you consciously wrestle with during the day get handed off, somewhere, somehow, to a background process that keeps working after you've given up. This is not mystical. It's neuroscience. The default mode network, the brain's background processing system, active during rest and mind wandering, is remarkably good at making connections between disparate pieces of information and finding solutions that the focused, effortful mind misses. The reason you wake up with an answer, or have a realization in the middle of washing dishes, is that the quiet background mind found something while the front of your mind was occupied elsewhere. This is a reason to trust the process of rest. It's a reason not to push too hard when you're stuck. The problem solving is happening. You just don't have access to it in real time. But it is happening. The solution is somewhere in there, finding its way toward you. 75. The balance between structure and freedom. Complete freedom can be paralyzing. The blank page with no constraints, no form, no starting point, it can be harder to begin than a page with a clear structure already in place. This is why constraints are often creative gifts. The sonnet's 14 lines, the haiku's syllable count, the limited palette, the brief. The form gives you something to push against, and the pushing is generative. But total structure is equally problematic, so rigid that there's no room for the unexpected, the emergent, the thing that arrives without being invited. The most productive creative space is somewhere between the two. Enough structure to get started, enough freedom to go somewhere unplanned. Finding that balance is different for every person and every project. Some creative work needs more structure, some needs more openness. The art is in knowing which kind of project you're in, and being willing to shift the balance as the work reveals what it needs. 76. The feeling of creative flow. There's a state that experienced creators describe, and that anyone who has ever been truly absorbed in making something has felt. Where the work just moves, where you're not struggling, where the choices come easily, and the execution follows the intention smoothly, and time passes without your awareness. This is what Csikszentmihalyi called flow, that optimal state of full engagement where challenge and skill are perfectly balanced, and you lose your ordinary sense of self in the activity. It feels effortless even when it isn't. It feels timeless. It feels like the best kind of being alive. You can't force yourself into it, but you can learn what conditions make it more likely for you. Certain times of day, certain amounts of preparation, certain kinds of project, certain environments. Pay attention to when flow comes for you. Those conditions are worth protecting and reproducing. Because flow is not a luxury. For a creative person, it's essential sustenance. 77. The ideas you haven't explored yet. Somewhere inside you. In some mental filing cabinet that you haven't opened in a while, or maybe never. There are ideas you haven't gotten to yet. Projects you've imagined but not started. Questions you've been curious about but never followed. Creative territories you've sensed existed but haven't moved toward. These unexplored ideas are not failures. They're not evidence that you're not productive enough or ambitious enough. They're potential. They're the work that's waiting for you to be ready for it, or for the right circumstances to align, or for some other piece of your creative life to finish first. The unexplored ideas are always there, patient and available. Some of them have been waiting a long time. Some of them are more recent arrivals. Take a moment to think about one, just one, that feels like it might be worth approaching. Not tonight, necessarily, but soon. When you're ready. What is it? 78. The beauty in slowing your thoughts. The rushing mind misses so much. When thoughts come fast, they stay on the surface, skimming across what's there without going deeper, making connections that are quick and obvious rather than slow and surprising. Slowing your thoughts down is like turning down the current in a river. Things that were being swept along can settle. You can see what's on the bottom. The slower, more deliberate pace of thought is more effortful but more revealing. It's the difference between flipping through a book and actually reading it. Slowing your thoughts also tends to regulate your nervous system. As the mind slows, the body often follows, the breath deepens, the muscles soften. Right now, in the quietness of this night, your thoughts may already be slowing. Let them. Don't try to speed them back up. Let each thought arrive in its own time, complete itself at its own pace, and pass gently before the next one arrives. 79. The way creativity can be calming. Creative work is often thought of as energizing and stimulating, as the kind of thing that gets you fired up, that fills you with ideas and aliveness. And it can be that. But creativity also has another register, one that's often overlooked. The deeply calming. The right kind of creative engagement can slow the nervous system, reduce anxiety, anchor the wandering attention, and bring a sense of peace and centeredness that's genuinely restorative. This is why art therapy works. It's why knitting and coloring books and pottery classes and journaling can all feel, at their best, like a particular kind of peace that's different from just sitting quietly. The making gives the anxious mind something to hold, and in the holding, the anxiety quiets. If you've experienced this, if there's a creative activity that genuinely calms you rather than stimulates you, that's worth knowing. That's a resource. That's something to reach for on difficult days. 80. The space between ideas. Between one idea and the next, there's a gap. It might be a moment or a week or a year. In that gap, it can feel like nothing is happening, like the creative well has run dry, like the ideas have stopped coming, like something has gone wrong. But the gap is rarely actually empty. It's more like the pause between a breath out and the next breath in, a moment of transition, of readiness, of the system preparing for what comes next. Ideas need space between them. You need time to fully inhabit one idea before the next one can really arrive. The gap is integration time, consolidation time, preparation time. If you're in a gap right now, between projects, between bursts of inspiration, in a period that feels creatively quiet, try to trust it. Try to receive it as what it might be, a necessary pause before the next thing arrives. The space between ideas is not absence. It's part of the creative cycle. It belongs there. 81. The gentle act of imagining. Imagination is one of the most underrated capacities we have. We think of it as somehow frivolous, the daydreamer's activity, the child's occupation, as opposed to the serious, productive thinking of planning and analyzing and deciding. But imagination is how everything new enters the world. Every object you've ever used was imagined before it was made. Every story that's ever moved you was imagined into existence. Every solution to a problem that looked impossible was first the product of someone asking, what if things were different? What if we tried this? What if the answer is something we haven't considered yet? The gentle act of imagining, of simply letting yourself picture things that don't yet exist, is the beginning of all creation. Right now, in the quiet of this night, let yourself imagine something. Not something practical or useful. Just something. Anything. Let the imagination move freely and see what it wants to show you. 82. The way time feels different when creating. Have you noticed how time seems to work differently when you're making something? Hours compress into what feel like minutes. Or sometimes the reverse. A single moment of seeing something clearly, of finding just the right word or gesture, expands into what feels like a much larger experience. Time becomes more elastic, less regular, less obedient to the clock. This is one of the distinctive qualities of creative engagement. It alters temporal perception in ways that feel almost like stepping outside of ordinary time. Many creators describe this as one of the most valuable aspects of their practice. Not the product, but the experience of being in a different relationship with time. In a world where time often feels scarce and relentless, the capacity to enter a state where time moves differently is a genuine gift. Think about when you've felt this. The work that made time disappear. The moment that somehow contained much more than its duration. 83. The thoughts that come without effort. Not all of the best thinking requires effort. Some of the most interesting, most original thoughts arrive when you're not trying. In the shower, on a walk, while you're doing something routine that occupies the hands but not the mind. These are the thoughts that bypass the gatekeeper of the effortful, critical, self-conscious mind. They arise from a different place. Quieter, less curated, more genuine. Thoughts that come without effort often have a different quality than labored thoughts. They're more surprising. They make unexpected connections. They arrive already formed rather than built up laboriously. If you want to have more of these effortless insights, the counterintuitive answer is rest more, move more. Do more of the quiet, hands-busy, mind-free activities that give the background mind room to operate. And when the effortless thought arrives, recognize it, value it, let it in, even if it's inconvenient, even if it changes something you had planned. 84. The calm in observing instead of doing. Sometimes the most creative thing you can do is nothing. Not nothing in the passive, waiting sense, but the active, attentive nothing of pure observation. Watching, listening, looking, being present to what's happening around you without any agenda, without needing to do anything about it or say anything about it or even remember it. Just seeing, just being a witness. There's a particular kind of nourishment in this. It refills something that the constant doing and producing and responding depletes. Observation is how the creative reserves get replenished. It's how you accumulate the material that will later become work, without even meaning to. Right now you're doing a version of this, lying still, not doing, letting the mind move and the night be what it is. This too is part of the creative life. This restful attentiveness is not time wasted. It's time well spent in exactly the way it might not look like. 85. The inspiration in everyday objects. Look around you at the ordinary objects in your life and try to see them as if for the first time. The shape of a glass, the particular texture of a wall, the way a lamp throws its light in a specific pattern across a ceiling. The objects we live with every day become invisible through familiarity. We stop actually seeing them and replace them with our idea of them. But to a fresh eye, even the most mundane object has qualities worth noticing: proportion, surface, the history written into it by use, the human decisions that went into its design. Everyday objects have inspired artists across every medium. Georgia O'Keeffe painted a door hinge the way others paint mountains. Giorgio Morandi spent decades painting the same bottles. The ordinary is not a lesser subject than the extraordinary. It's just harder to see clearly because familiarity has clouded the view. Practice seeing one ordinary thing today as if you've never seen it before. 86. The quiet joy of thinking deeply. Deep thinking is rarer than we might like. Most of our thinking is reactive, surface level, responsive to demands. We think what the immediate situation requires and then move on. The kind of thinking where you actually follow an idea all the way through, where you turn it over, consider it from multiple angles, follow its implications, ask what it connects to, let it develop and surprise you. That kind of thinking requires uninterrupted time and the willingness to stay with something even when it becomes complex or uncomfortable. But the rewards of deep thinking are proportional to its difficulty. The insights you find when you actually follow an idea all the way down are qualitatively different from the insights available at the surface. There's a quiet joy in it, the satisfaction of really thinking about something, really understanding it in a way you didn't before. Tonight, let your mind go deeper into something that interests you. Follow it. See where it leads. 87. The way creativity evolves with you. You are not the same person you were 5 years ago. The events of your life, the things you've learned, the losses you've sustained, and the joys you've experienced. All of it has changed you in ways both visible and invisible. And your creativity has changed with you. It has had to. Because creativity is not separate from the person doing it. It's an expression of the person doing it, and when the person changes, the expression changes too. This is sometimes experienced as loss. The creative energy you had at a different time of life, the particular quality of seeing or making that belonged to a younger or differently situated version of yourself. But it's also gain. The depth and complexity available to you now, the emotional range you've earned through living. These are creative resources too. Your creativity evolves with you. The version of it available to you right now is the most fully developed, most richly informed version you've had. Honor it. 88. The ideas waiting to be discovered. There are ideas in the world that no one has had yet. Combinations of existing things that haven't been combined. Questions that haven't been asked in quite this way. Ways of seeing that are available but haven't yet been articulated. The creative space is genuinely infinite. There is no shortage of ideas, only occasional shortages of the attention and openness needed to receive them. The ideas waiting to be discovered are waiting for someone who is paying attention in just the right way, who has accumulated just the right combination of experiences and knowledge, who is open to the possibility of something new. That could be anyone. It could be you. The next great idea in your field, your medium, your life might be sitting just at the edge of your awareness right now. Close enough to touch, waiting for the moment when you slow down enough and open up enough to let it in. Stay curious. The discoveries are still out there. 89. The peace of letting your mind wander. There is peace available in the wandering mind, a different kind of peace than the focused, deliberate calm of meditation, but real peace nonetheless. When you let your mind wander without judgment, without telling it to stop and focus, without feeling guilty about the undirectedness, there's a kind of relief in it. The mind goes where it naturally wants to go, which is more honest than where you direct it. It follows its own interests, its own associations, its own sense of what's worth thinking about. And in following those natural inclinations without interference, there's a feeling of alignment, of being in step with yourself rather than pushing against yourself. Let your mind wander tonight. Give it permission to go wherever it wants. Don't call it back. Don't redirect it. Just observe where it travels, with gentle curiosity, as if you're watching a bird move through a wide sky. 90. The simplicity of a single idea. Sometimes the most powerful place to begin is with a single, clear idea. Not a complicated project, not an elaborate plan, just one thing. One image you want to explore. One question you want to ask. One feeling you want to put into some kind of form. There's a purifying quality to simplicity at the beginning of creative work. It gives you a fixed point to orient around, a thread to follow, a starting place that's small enough not to be overwhelming and substantial enough to actually begin. Many great creative work started from a single, simple seed, an overheard phrase, a visual image, a personal question. The complexity arrived later, as the work developed and demanded it. But the beginning was simple. Start with one thing. Let it be as small as it needs to be. The simplicity of a single idea is not a limitation. It's a beginning. And beginnings are where everything starts. 91. What you might create tomorrow. Tomorrow is still open. Nothing about it has been decided yet. Nothing is fixed. Everything is possible. Including the possibility that you might make something. Not necessarily something large or ambitious. Just something. A drawing on a napkin. A paragraph. A photograph of something that catches your eye. A song hummed into a voice memo. A page in a journal. These small, spontaneous acts of creation are not insignificant. They're the texture of a creative life, the daily accumulation of small making that builds, over time, into something larger. Think about tomorrow. Think about one small thing you might make, if you gave yourself permission to follow even a minor creative impulse. Not a project, not a commitment, just a gesture. Just a small act of making, offered freely to the day. What might it be? The thought of it is enough to hold for now. 92. The feeling of starting fresh. There's a particular gift in the fresh start, the clean page, the new beginning, the moment before any mistakes have been made in this particular endeavor. Starting fresh is not the same as pretending the past didn't happen. You bring everything you know, everything you've learned, everything you've made before with you. But the specific project is new, unburdened, not yet tangled in complications or carrying the weight of abandoned attempts. Starting fresh is available to you more often than you might think. Not just at the obvious moments, new year, new notebook, new project. But any time, really. Any moment can be a fresh start if you're willing to bring a genuinely new intention to it. What would it mean to bring a fresh perspective to something that has become heavy or stuck? What would it mean to see it with new eyes, as if you were beginning rather than continuing? The fresh start is always just one choice away. 93. The comfort of knowing ideas return. One of the most reassuring things you can know about ideas is that they come back. The idea you had and lost, that you were sure you wouldn't be able to reconstruct, that slipped away before you could write it down, often returns in some form. Maybe not exactly, maybe not in the same moment of clarity, but the underlying impulse, the essential direction, the seed of the thing tends to return if it was genuinely worth following. Ideas that belong to you have a way of finding you again. They're patient. They keep presenting themselves until you finally pay attention. This isn't a reason to be careless about capturing ideas when they arrive. Write them down, record them, give them a home. But it is a reason not to despair when one slips away. If it mattered, it will come back. And if it doesn't come back in exactly the same form, what arrives instead might be better than what you lost. Trust the cycle of ideas returning. 94. The beauty of creative rest. There is a season for everything in a creative life, and rest is one of the seasons. The fallow period, when you're not actively making, when the energy for creation has quieted, is not a failure of productivity. It's a necessary part of the cycle. Farmers understand this. They know that a field that never rests eventually stops producing. The creative self is the same. The periods of rest, of input rather than output, of living and observing rather than making, are what allow the next period of production to be rich rather than depleted. If you're in a fallow period right now, if the desire to create is quieted and you're in a phase of receiving rather than giving, let it be that. Don't force. Don't perform productivity you don't feel. Rest is not the opposite of creativity. It's one of the forms creativity takes when it's preparing for its next season. Honor the rest as you honor the making. 95. The way your mind resets overnight. Sleep is one of the most astonishing and underappreciated things your mind does. While you sleep, it sorts through the experiences of the day and decides what to keep and what to let go. It consolidates new learning, strengthening connections that were formed during the day. It runs maintenance, clearing out metabolic waste, rebalancing systems, preparing the whole apparatus for another day of experience. And it does something else. It resets. The emotional weight of the day, the frustrations, the anxieties, the unresolved tensions, gets processed and lightened during sleep. You wake up with access to those experiences, but with less of the acute charge they carried the night before. The morning often has a clarity that the tired evening couldn't offer. Tonight's sleep is already doing this work for you. Even now, as you lie here, the reset has begun. Tomorrow morning, something will be different. Something will be clearer or lighter or more possible. 96. The calm of not needing answers. Some of the most freeing moments in creative life come when you stop needing to know the answer. When you can sit with a question, an uncertainty, an unresolved situation, and find it interesting rather than threatening. The poet Keats called this negative capability, the capacity to be comfortable in uncertainty, mystery, and doubt without an irritable reaching after fact and reason. It's one of the most useful qualities a creative person can develop, because the best creative questions don't have tidy answers. The most interesting creative territories are inherently uncertain. If you already know what you're going to find, you're not really exploring. You're just confirming. The calm of not needing answers is the calm of genuine inquiry. It's the feeling of holding a question lightly, without pressure, letting it be what it is, unanswered, alive, still generative, still worth staying with. What question are you comfortable not answering tonight? 97. The softness of quiet thoughts. Not all thoughts have the same texture. Some are sharp and urgent and loud. They demand attention. They press. Others are soft and quiet and passing, almost more like weather than like thoughts in the usual sense. A feeling of something, a color at the edge of awareness, a memory that surfaces gently rather than intrusively. Right now, as the night deepens and the conditions for rest settle in, your thoughts might be becoming softer, less sharp-edged, more like the thoughts that come between waking and sleeping, when the mind is letting go of its grip on the day and beginning to release into rest. These soft, quiet thoughts are worth a kind of gentle attention, not the focused, grasping attention of daytime thinking, but a softer receptivity, noticing without holding, letting each thought arise and pass like breath. What soft thoughts are here with you tonight? What is the quality of your mind right now, in this particular moment? 98. The possibility in every new idea. Every new idea contains a universe of possibility. Before you've tried to realize it, before you know what it will actually become or what it will cost or what will be difficult about it, in that first moment of its arrival, it holds everything it might be. It might change something. It might lead somewhere important. It might be the beginning of something you'll spend years with, or a small, finished thing that nonetheless matters deeply, or a stepping stone to something else entirely. The moment of a new idea is a moment of pure potential. And even though most ideas don't become everything they seem to promise in that first exciting moment, the potential is real. The possibility is real. The new idea is worth taking seriously, worth following at least a little way, worth asking what it might become. Because some ideas do become everything they promised. Some ideas change things. And you can't know which ones those are until you follow them. 99. The peace of this moment. Right now. In this specific moment. This exact place and time. This particular night. There is a peace available if you're willing to receive it. Not the absence of difficulty or uncertainty. Not the resolution of everything that's unresolved. Just the peace of this. The night doing its work. Your body resting. Your mind slowing. The world going on at its own pace while you are here. Still. Held by the dark and the quiet. This moment won't come again. It is exactly what it is once. And in it, if you let yourself settle fully into it, there is something genuinely restful. Something available. A kind of okayness that doesn't depend on anything being different than it is. Just the peace of being alive in a quiet moment. The peace of not needing to be anywhere else, doing anything else, being any other version of yourself. Just here. Just now. Just this. 100. The simple act of breathing and letting go. And finally, at the end of all of this thinking, all of this wandering through ideas and memories and possibilities and questions, there is the simplest thing of all. Just breath. Just the body doing what it knows how to do without being asked. In and out. The chest rising and falling. The air moving. Every breath in is a small act of receiving. Every breath out is a small act of letting go. You've been thinking tonight, and that's good. Your mind has been wandering through all of this creative territory. The memories, the ideas, the questions, the possibilities. Now, gently, you can let all of it rest. You don't need to hold any of it. Whatever came up that matters will still be there in the morning. The ideas will return. The questions will wait. For now, just breathe. Let the breath do its quiet, faithful work. Let the night hold you. Let everything you are carrying today become just a little bit lighter. And let yourself rest.